Hello and welcome to the Charting Complex, Dynamic, and Extra-orbital Space Operations presentation. I, along with my fellow co-authors, Andy Anderegg and Sean O'Neill, are going to present a few ideas towards enabling the free trade of space. And before we get started, we do want to take a minute and just thank AIAA for the opportunity to present these ideas. This will not come as a surprise, but space has been changing. The environment is changing. The operations and technologies that exist in this environment is changing. And as a result, the space catalog that supports these new missions really needs an upgrade and some changing. Commercial space sustainability will rely on the nature itself of this new space catalog. It needs to be more than just a registry of space objects. Characterization of those objects, the environment by which they operate, distributed decision-making, and discoverable timelines will all contribute towards this free trade of space and free movement in space. There may be new opportunities that arise, expanded services to enable these new constructs, and in this paper we explore the details of this proposed dynamic space catalog. I alluded to a changing environment. Commercial constellations plan to increase objects on orbit, pushing commercial operations to over 90% of the activities. This is a big statement. The industry that is driving up the need for more operations in space need ways to exchange information and to work through these events, sometimes in near real-time fashion. New mission change assumptions and the paradigms and the needs for the space catalog itself. There are new companies that need to be a part of the space catalog. There are new maneuvering objects that are not characterized by orbits themselves that need to be a part of the space catalog. And there's an increase to the tempo of which we exchange this information. We contend that some of these interfaces that have been people-to-people interfaces will have to move towards machine-to-machine interfaces and are enabled by new technologies that are emerging. The commercial operators, they're going to require delicate international negotiations to do so and greater global cooperation. It's going to take a lot of partnership across industry to keep up with this changed environment. A dynamic catalog is a solution, but it will need expanded content. Greater knowledge of all space activities will be needed to facilitate direct collaborative decision-making between operators. The layers of information required to do this may not all need to be captured in this dynamic space catalog. However, it will need to be captured and provided at the just-in-time moment. Physics will always remain, and the knowledge of the environment and the mission and safety factors will remain the same. However, the types of operations, the types of fidelity or higher fidelity information required for these new types of operations and the sources of uncertainty will arise. And this needs to be captured as part of that dynamic space catalog as the basis for enabling safety of mission during these events. Defining the intent, coordination language for space operators will be equally as important. We will be able to pre-plan some of these bigger events, sometimes crossing orbits, sometimes traversing each other just in time. And understanding what the language is to drive those types of actions and behaviors and being consistent to one another in a global environment is going to be key towards a long-term solution enabling free trade of space. The monitoring of missions and objects, that's something we do today. Lots of surveillance and the monitoring of those events. But we contend that we don't need to do all that monitoring for everyone for every event. When an event comes close and we know the players that need to interact, they can then become their own decision makers for what data actually needs to be passed to one another to get through the event itself. And then last, the knowledge of vehicles and mission parameters will be key to this discoverable knowledge set. Understanding how to dynamically register your space mission or your space object that you are accountable and responsible for, or to how to get in touch with each other once items and objects and risks are imposed in the space environment is going to be key to this mission going forward. So the technical knowledge of the object itself and the legal and ownership information for those objects, equally important to the physics and the environment by which we move through our new missions. This dynamic catalog of new information will have to be captured with time views over the course of space operations. There really will be differing timescales for the types of events that we're planning towards or planning through and executing in the future. This goes from future month planning, where we have known tourism actually planned and scheduled, all the way through going back in time post-event and looking for the reconstruction and analysis towards maybe bettering how we exchange information or the type of information going forward as a community of interest. A dynamic catalog would really span between these 2 or 3 timescales, but it really would provide that near real-time understanding that affects one another's actions on each other's operations. And so going through the timescale, if you've planned well out in advance, you may know some of the industry partners that you need to work with to get through a planned event that is happening months out. But as that time window actually shrinks, the fidelity of the information increases, and the crowdsourced knowledge of that space environment also gives you much more information to start executing against a series of actions in coordination with others in that particular space environment that you need to coordinate with. And then, of course, that window continues to shrink, and now you're near real time. And one would say that maybe some of these interfaces won't be people to people in the future, and yet machine to machine. The technology is increasing and available for space entities and happening. And so the coordination of debris avoidance maneuvering, autonomous actions, etc., those timelines are now shrinking, and therefore the data that needs to be passed must be known up front. Post-event, we will do the reconstruction for an analysis of what happened. This will lead to lessons learned to update those actions and behaviors as mentioned before, and we'll see an example of that in a future slide. But also for attribution, should there be any issues, to understand how we work with one another going forward. Sustainability really does rely on those actions and behaviors that we walked through in the previous slide. And to do this, we really need to work together and commit across industry towards building a playbook of norms and practices to complement the dynamic catalog. This is a notional playbook, but the playbook might have courses of action and operator decisions pre-coordinated and planned to derive the types of information that we're going to need to pass to one another and how we might pass that and on what timeline. It might drive new business internal risk tolerances to change. There may be information that was held within industry firewalls that might need to be shared, not necessarily through the playbook itself or the catalog, but with one another during an event where you're negotiating. And again, we'll see an example of that on the next slide. We have a list here, not meant to be an exhaustive list of routine actions or plays that could be considered. And in the paper, we explore some of these, but it really is going to take industry coming together to collaborate and form this playbook for space operations, to practice and be prepared for events where we need to, in a very hyper-focused time scale and environment, understand who we need to interact with and how. And this is a global challenge. There may be needs to normalize on language where there are language barriers. And so a lot of this work really happening up front will enable a risk tolerance for companies, as well as drive down risk for companies towards free trade of space going forward. Here's an example where during a near real-time event, you have an operator that's starting to take action and an affected operator coordinating. It's a person-to-person interaction, but it could be machine-to-machine or machine-to-person in the future. The operator taking action is coordinating with the affected operator by saying, hey, I'm letting you know I'm now taking action, I'm passing through your orbit, but I need you to share information with me at the highest fidelity so that we can coordinate this and make sure that the event is safe. And so the affected operator is now discovering new information in near real time from the operator taking action. This is not actually coming from the space catalog, and they're asking each other questions. What is your heading and speed? Can you share your ephemeris? What propulsion are you using? When might you have a better predicted number of available information? Is it 45 minutes out? Is it 15 minutes out? How are we going to interact through this is really what they're asking. And then from there, what's your tolerance level? What is your company allowing you as far as actions to be taken? What are government entities allowing both affected parties to take as acceptable action going forward? So how much error? What's the maximum delay? And you're seeing here, even do you have leeway in the time that you're passing? This is all pertinent information to enable this exchange to get through a space event. And this might happen numerous times in an hour across the world. It will have to be scaled. And so having that playbook in place with the right language and the right artifacts and course of actions and decision-making processes will enable the discoverable information phase during an event. And so collaborative decision-making really does become daily operations. There's preemptive daily operations, there's collaborative daily operations, and there's execution through some of the daily operations, which we just saw. Passing the information back and forth, being able to understand what's in that dynamic catalog that could be used for these daily operations, what's the time variant for the fidelity required for this decision-making process. This could be a government entity doing this process for the world, but probably not. This is probably a mix and hybrid of commercial entities, government entities, and different national views for how we'll do this and enable the global commons going forward. And we're really excited about what this brings to new companies, new third-party vendors, because with these new needs for data, for new needs to enable these actions and behaviors through a playbook, there are new opportunity spaces for commercial third-party vendors and small companies to assist in this overall dialogue towards the global commons. There are services like third-party surveillance groups or risk modeling or the action logging that we alluded to in the after analysis that we believe needs to be a part of the dynamic space catalog will all assist in all these new needs that are enabled by new space operations and a dynamic space catalog. So in summary, the future space catalog, it needs to expand. It needs to expand with discoverable operator details. It needs to span from future to near real time and into the past. And it needs to take into account new technologies and the data that's necessary to do just this. The knowledge and decision making, it will be distributed, it'll be discoverable, it'll need new support infrastructure to enable. So there are new needs, but that means new opportunities. And this is an exciting time for space and a way for the community to come together and really push each other towards that free trade of space that we see in other domains. I appreciate you listening to this presentation. If you have any questions, please contact either myself or Andy or Sean. Our emails are here, and highly encourage you to read the paper and contact us with any further follow-up. This is a topic that we are passionate about and will be pursuing. Thank you.